To the preview and predictions for the Strikeforce Heavyweight Tournament opening round, which gets underway this weekend, with Fedor Emelianenko, the former Pride Heavyweight Champion, squaring off against the former Elite XC Heavyweight Champion Antonio Bigfoot Silva, and also we have from the other side of the bracket Sergey Kharitonov versus former UFC Heavyweight Champion Andrei Arlovski. But to start off with things, we are going to get on with the main event. Fedor Emelianenko, the former Pride Heavyweight Champion, coming in with a record of 32 wins, 2 losses, no draws and 1 no contest. And it has to be said, Fedor, obviously he's fought in these Grand Prix tournaments before, obviously in Pride, won the open weight tournament there, former Pride Heavyweight Champion, has a massive experience advantage over Antonio Bigfoot Silva, and it will be by far Antonio Bigfoot Silva's biggest challenge to date. Obviously Bigfoot Silva does have the 1 win over Andrei Arlovski, who's going to be fighting this Saturday too. But you have to look at Fedor. He has some massive wins on his resume, you know. If you go back to Pride, his legendary fights with Antonio Minotauro Nogueira, which he beat him twice, Mirko Krokop. Obviously, since Pride went defunct, he has beaten 2 former UFC heavyweight champions in Tim Sylvia and Andrei Arlovski, as well as the stoppage of Brett Rogers, who will also be in the other side of the tournament. So if you're a betting man, it would be very hard to look away from choosing Fedor to win this fight. Obviously Antonio Bigfoot Silva is no slouch, don't get me wrong, 15-2, you know, has a loss to Verdum, who actually beat Fedor in his last fight, but you'd have to say, you know, we saw in his last fight, Bigfoot against Mike Kyle, that the smaller guys with the faster footwork are going to cause him problems. And I cannot see any way that Fedor is not going to find range on what can only be described as a massive head that Antonio Bigfoot Silva possesses. So if I was a betting man, I would have to say that Fedor Emelianenko will improve his record to 33-2, and we'll move on to the next round, where he will face the winner of Alistair Overeem or Fabricio Verdum, who are both slated to fight in April in the next instalment of the Strikeforce Heavyweight Tournament. As we move down the card, we have our other quarter-final fight, which involves former UFC Heavyweight Champion 15-8 Andrei Arlovski against former Pride veteran Sergey Kharitonov, who is 17-4. And it has to be said, two fighters who are looking to get their way back on top of the heavyweight heap. Obviously Andrei Arlovski, always known for his UFC stint where he was the heavyweight champion, does have some wins on his resume, you know. He has a win over Fabricio Verdum, which happened in the UFC. He also has a win over former UFC heavyweight champion Tim Sylvia, as well as UFC Ultimate Fighter Season 10 winner Roy Big Country Nelson. But it has to be said, he has lost his last 3 fights. All 3 of those losses have come to fighters that are in this tournament: Fedor Emelianenko, Brett Rogers, Antonio Bigfoot Silva. And it has to be said that there is big questions about Arlovski's chin and whether he can withstand punishment. And we will find answers to that significantly in this fight, because Sergey Kharitonov is an excellent boxer. You know, early on in his career, got some big wins, you know, over Fabricio Verdum, former UFC heavyweight champion Pedro Rizzo. But it has to be said, over the last 3 years, I think he's had 3 MMA fights in the last 3 years. One of those was a loss to Jeff Monson, and the other 2 were to people that just are unmarketable fighters that I can't even remember the names of them. They were pretty much bums. But he does have what I would describe as really good hands, and the question is, who's going to land out the knockout punch first? Kharitonov's chin isn't shot, so my money would be on him, but it is a very close fight. I mean, Kharitonov, interestingly, is the only person to be in this tournament that's beat both Verdum and Overeem. He was the last person to knock Overeem out, but he does have losses to Overeem, so they're 1 for 1. You know, so there's a lot of. It'd be interesting to see if Strikeforce hype him up as being the last man to knock out their heavyweight champion Alistair Overeem. So if I was a betting man, I would bet that we will see Sergey Karatanov go through to the semi-finals. And it will remain to be seen who he will fight, either Josh Barnett or Brett Rogers. That pretty much sums up the bulk of the card. We do have 3 heavyweight fights further down the card. Unbeaten prospect Shane De La Rosa, 10-0, fights LeVar Johnson, who has come up through the Showtime contender scene, maybe best known for being shot and surviving, and remarkably has come back and has put together a nice win streak in Strikeforce. This is going to be one of the 3 reserve bouts that is going to be on show. The other one that may pick up the fancy of the casual fan is Valentin Overeem, the brother of Alistair Overeem, fighting former K1 legend Ray Sefo. Valentin, don't be fooled by his record and the fact that he was the last person to submit Randy Couture. You know, over the betting lines, Valentin's favourite, but I just don't see it. You know, of what I've seen of Valentin Overeem, I think his record's 29 for 25. As soon as any lever hits that guy's face, he's looking for a way out of that cage, or looking to submit or to fall to the floor. And he will come up against a very, very seasoned striker, and Ray Sefo, obviously formerly runner-up in the K1 tournament, training at Elite XC, Extreme Couture, you know, so 2-0, so he's not had much MMA experience. But if I was a betting man, I would put the money on Ray Sefo, and he possibly, for me, could be a dark horse if they ever need a reserve fighter to stand in for this 8-man tournament. And the first fight of the night will be Chad Griggs versus newcomer Gian Vellante. Chad Griggs may have come to notoriety by his stoppage of Bobby Lashley last year, but it has to be said, I find it hard to see him beating Gian Vellante. Vellante is someone that has gone under the radar, but is a very seasoned. I think he's 9 for 1, but he's a good prospect. I know he was on the UFC's eye for a while. Strikeforce did well to hook him up. Naturally, he's a light heavyweight, but he has fought a Ring of Combat. He's their current, he's just give up, but he was their current light heavyweight and heavyweight champion. So it would be interesting to see whether he can bring it up to the big show. I think he has a very good chance of stopping Chad Griggs. If I was a betting man, I would go for Gian Vellante. So this card, 5 heavyweight fights. I think only 2 of them really have any importance, because they're the 2 for the tournament. So like I said, if you're a betting man, get your money on Fedor Emelianenko and Sergey Karatanov. And that's it. We will be back Sunday if you're interested, as we will recap the show, see if the predictions I made there were right, and I'm sure that this will be a very, very exciting time for Strikeforce as they open up to their Strikeforce Heavyweight Tournament.